I woke before the first pale seam of light parted the far hills and set the coffee to perk in the blue enamel pot. Frost had hauled itself over the pump handle like a silver glove. The mare puffed white and stamped once as if to say we'd both agreed to this life, and now it was time to honor the agreement. I checked the line fence with a gloved hand, the rawhide mended clean from yesterday's repair, and listened to the quiet creak of cedar rails settling in the cold. I kept a ledger on the kitchen table with my brand, H-bar, penciled at the top of every page. I liked the way rows of numbers stood their ground if you lined them right. That morning, the ledger waited beside a folded letter I had read twice and set aside. The steam off the coffee made the ink look tired. I didn't touch the letter. I'd already taken its measure. The letter said the bride had changed her mind. The words were decent enough about it, short of apology, long on hope that I'd understand. I worked a thumb along the paper's crease, the way a man will smooth a finished board. No splinters, clean edge, nothing more to be done. Outside, the wind picked through the buffalo grass like a woman separating lentils. I had sent money east for her fare, like a man lays a wager with care and quiet. Folks do strange sums when winter is coming on, and my arithmetic had included a roofline lighted at supper and a second plate warming by the stove. I had not dreamed bigger than that. The letter closed those figures as tidy as a clerk snaps a book. So I went down to the lower pasture and salted the steers. By noon the sun loosened a little, and a hawk rode the sky like he owned it. My shovel rang against a buried rock and trimmed the ditch's shoulder neat. The kind of work you can measure sip by sip, like coffee that never burns your mouth. I was not angry. I was something narrower than that, like a strap drawn one notch tighter than comfort. Come evening, I lit the lamp and set it by the window, just to see the glass take a little gold in the dim. I warmed a pan and fried salt pork with a heel of bread. The room had the clean smell of pine soap and iron. In a town, a man might go out to forget a letter. On the prairie, a man stands still and hears it until the hearing hollows a space for air again. It was full dark when the knock came. Not hard, not timid. 2 even taps, and then a pause. I set my fork down and looked once to the window where the lamp made a round coin on the glass. Outside, the wind slid a loose spoon of snow along the sill, though the sky had been clear at sundown. I opened the door. A woman stood on the step in a dark traveling cloak, with the dust of miles worn into the hem. She had a carpet bag in one hand and a little tin of biscuits tied with twine in the other, like it had once been a gift, and could be again. Her eyes went from my boots to my face, as if counting years and weather. "Good evening," she said, and tipped her chin as if to pass a hat she did not wear. "You're at the right door for good evening," I said. My voice came out steady, which surprised me more than the knock. She eased back her hood. "You are Mr. Hart of the H-bar place." Not a question. The wind took that line and laid it across the yard, set it there like a plank. "I am," I said. "I'm Ada Merrick," she said, "Clara's sister." A coal popped in the stove behind me as if it, too, understood plain words when it heard them. I stepped back so the light could find her face. She didn't flinch from it. She had the straight mouth of a woman who will make a bed square and live with whatever comes next. The carpet bag looked heavy. The biscuits did not. "She sent a letter," I said, and felt a meanness rise to call my timing poor. I swallowed it. "You'd better come in out of the cold." "I'll come as far as your table," she said. "Then I'll go to Mrs. Pike's if there's a room." I came to say it plain so folks won't think crosswise. Clara won't be coming. She's married to a wheelwright in Peoria. He is kind and steady, and I am glad for her. She was fearful you'd be wronged. I told her I'd carry that fear here and answer for it as far as work can answer. That's all. She set the tin on the table without ceremony and stood with her hands wrapped on the carpet-bag handle. Her knuckles had the raw shine of cold and soap. I poured a cup and pushed it toward her. Steam rose like a small mercy. "Sit," I said. "You've earned that much from the road. You can tell me the rest with something hot inside you." She sat, but barely took the edge of the chair, as if readied for a quick exit. She took a sip and set the cup down, as if it might not hold the next try. I can sew. I can keep a ledger and make change without fingers. I can cook plain, and the bread will rise where bread ought to rise. If there's no room at Mrs. Pike's, I can sleep in the church vestibule till morning. I will not cross your threshold past this room. Mrs. Pike has a spare. She keeps it for school teachers and weather, I said. I'll hitch the bay and take you over there in half an hour. As for work, I have need of hands when spring comes, and calves do what calves will do. Would you work for a wage, and you're bored at Mrs. Pike's, to square what you feel needs squaring? She held my eyes a count longer than comfort. Yes, for a month, she said. A month, then, I said. I took the ledger and a pencil and wrote a line at the bottom of the page. Her name looked settled there, as if the paper had left it a space. We'll see after that. She nodded. Thank you, she said. The words were not small. They were iron-filed smooth from use. We rode into town with the moon working its way out of a bank of cloud, pale as the inside of a shell. The harness jingled low, and the road was a thin ribbon of frozen mud. Ada sat straight, hands folded, eyes on the dark shapes of cottonwoods along the creek. Clara wanted to write again, she said. I told her one letter was enough. A wound does not need 2 knives. I flicked the reins gentle. Ain't much to cut, I said. A man gets lonesome. That's a truth, not a wound. She nodded at the river's far bank as if the water were speaking sense only she could hear. Lonely can make bad bargains, she said, almost to herself. I let the night take that where it liked. The sky felt taller than usual. That was the first quiet in which we stood together. Mrs. Pike opened her door with her shawl clutched and her hair in a serviceable knot. She wore the look of a woman prepared to be put out and willing to be won over. Well, she said, eyes quick from my face to Ada's. This is Miss Merrick, I said. She'll take your spare if you've got it to take. She's to work days at my place and sleep like a Christian at yours, wages weekly cash. Mrs. Pike put her hands on her hips and considered Ada's cloak hem. You will not track that mud across my rug, she said, but you may come in and stand on the mat while I warm a plate. I will hear the particulars in the morning with the sun up where it can see us straight. Yes, ma'am, Ada said. She had the sense to smile with her eyes, not her mouth. The door took her in, and the lamplight laid itself across the threshold like a road newly planed. I touched my hat to both women and stepped back into the night. The river made a patient sound under its skin of ice as I drove home. The wind had given up on argument and settled for company. At my table, the tin of biscuits waited, tied neat with twine. I untied it and ate one standing. It tasted like a woman who'd done her best on a train that ran late. I put the lid back on and wrote in the ledger, 1 month. Fair wages, fair weather if the Lord can find it. The lamp chimed once in the cold when I turned it down. That was all the talking done. Days don't ask permission to be ordinary. I woke, lit, fed, mended, rode out. Ada came with the dawn and set to. She found the box of dull knives and took a whetstone to them, until they would shave a hair off the back of your hand. She set the pantry to rights, lined jars with their mouths all turned to face the same way, and washed the curtains without making a speech about it. She kept her coat on against the draught and hummed once, low, like a woman who made agreements with silence and held to them. We said what needed saying. Sour milk? She'd ask, holding the crock to the light. Mostly, I'd answer. Then buttermilk biscuits, she'd say, and that was that. She never pried. I did not ask what she'd left in Peoria beyond a sister who chose different. We traded incompetence and clean floors, and that coin spent well. Town did what towns do, counted, named, reckoned. At the mercantile, old Gable looked me over and said, Heard tell your bride took a turn. He smelled of molasses and barrels. I put sacking, salt, and lamp oil on the counter and set the money beside it. "I got a hand at the house that can turn a hem straighter than last year's fence line," I said. "That's the turn I'm taking." Gable weighed my coin and made no more of it. On a Wednesday, a snow came soft as sifted flour and laid the world white without much ceremony. The creek went from dark to pewter, and the sky took on the color a blade gets right before it bites. Ada came anyway, boots wrapped in burlap against the drifts. She had a bundle under her arm tied with calico. She set it on the table and unknotted it to show a neat stack of shirts, with the H-bar stitched discreet at the tail. "Men can keep track of themselves or not," she said, "but linen can be told what to do." "You've told it fine," I said. The truth of it warmed more than the stove. We ate stew with hard ends of bread and watched the storm consider us from the window. She reached across and straightened the tin of biscuits as if one good deed could redeem 100 small crookednesses. That afternoon a calf went slick and scours took him ugly. I carried the little fool into the shed where the wind couldn't pry at his bones. Ada followed without waiting to be asked, and held his head steady while I mixed salt and egg and hope. Her hands didn't shake. "I helped a farmer once with hogs," she said. "Life is stubborn. Sometimes you just have to be more so." The calf blinked as if negotiating with us. We won that argument by an inch. Come Friday, Reverend Lowe paid a call on his way past, his sleigh sounding like someone talking in his sleep. He stood on my step and looked from me to Ada and back, the lines around his mouth earnestly kind. "I make rounds," he said. "Some are shorter than others." "We're squared," I said. "Miss Merrick works days and keeps her nights at Mrs. Pike's where decency can count to 2. "I'd like a word with Miss Merrick, then," he said, not unkind. Ada met his eye and nodded toward the yard where the woodpile had drifted. He clambered down and took an armload without being asked. "A word can wait on work," he said to the wood, and brought it in like a deacon bearing hymnals. He left us with a loaf and an absence shaped like a benediction. "He is the right size for that coat," Ada said. "Men that fit their coats don't go crooked in a wind." I laughed once, quick, and she looked surprised at herself for having drawn it out. The sound put another notch in the day. If you're listening along, take a sip of water and set your shoulders back a touch. Winter likes to creep up the spine, and a straight back is its own stove. The thaw came like a rumor, and then a certainty. The road worked itself into ruts, and the creek broke its skin and spoke in a louder voice. Work changed color. Calves put their knees where they shouldn't, and had to be chivied into sense. The bay rubbed his mane against the corral post, and looked pleased with himself without good cause. Ada measured seed into paper twists, with the care of a banker counting other people's money. In town, a letter waited at Gable's in a thick, officious hand. It was from a distant uncle of Ada's, lawyer words lined up like soldiers, requesting she return east to discharge certain familial obligations, meaning tend an aunt with a poor disposition and better silver. He included a rail voucher with a deadline stamped on it as if a person's life were a parcel to be claimed before it went to dead letters. Ada read it without a blink and folded it neat. "You got folks," I said. "Everyone has folks," she said. "Some are kind, some are habitual. I will answer him when I have the right words, and not before." "Right words are few," I said, thinking of the letter that had closed a door for me, and opened this one in the same motion. She tucked the voucher into her carpet bag with the biscuit tin, a traveling kit of duties. That night a cold rain came with a temper, and the creek decided it would be a river for a spell. I watched the water climb its banks and shove little islands of grass loose to send them traveling. Ada had already left for town, but the road back crossed the ford, so I saddled the bay and rode down to the cottonwoods to see what sense the world was keeping. I found her on the near bank, rain shining her hair dark as walnut. She had not tried the crossing. She had a better respect for moving water than most men I knew. "That ford will take a wagon when it's decent," I said, "and right now it's mean." The bay shifted under me, ears pointed at the noise like he wanted to argue. "I can walk along the fence line to Mrs. Pike's if I don't mind being wet," she said. The rain made quick needles on her cloak. She did not look bothered by it. She looked like a woman counting choices. "My place is closer," I said. "We'll wait this temper out. You can have the bed. I'll take the bunk in the tack room. We can spare the gossip a night. I'll send word with Lo when he rattles by. Folks listen to a collar better than to luck." She studied the flood as if it were a man who talked too much. "All right," she said. "I trust you to make that right with the world because I cannot make it right by myself tonight." Her voice was flat, the way a tool is flat so it can plane true. We did, as we said. She took the bed and set a chair against the door, which made us both feel better about what the world might try. I took the tack room and the company of oiled leather and horse sweat. The rain drummed the roof like fingers trying to recall a tune. Sometime near midnight, the creek found its old sense and began to fall back into itself like a man who realizes he has raised his voice at supper. With dawn, Reverend Lo came along the ridge, coat steaming. He tapped at the window with his mitten like a neighbor who had learned how to knock on ice. "All's well," he called. "Mrs. Pike says the spare waits, and gossip's been told to sit in the corner and rethink its life." I thanked him and sent Ada with a sack of apples for payment. She turned at the gate and touched 2 fingers to her brow in a gesture halfway between a soldier and a sister. The yard looked longer when she was on the other side of it. After the water went down, I found the fence by the ford laid flat and the corner post leaning like a tired man. I set it right with a shovel and a prayer, to no one in particular. Ada came later with pie, sour apple, the kind that starts you at the back of the jaw and returns you kindly by the last bite. "Pike says gratitude ought to be baked or it isn't finished," she said. We stood by the mended fence and ate with our hands because sometimes spoons are fancy. At the branding in May, the neighbors came and smoke wrote its short stories in the sky. We moved steady, not rushing the calves, letting each animal know the world would continue on after a brief shock. Ada turned the crank on the medicine sprayer with a rhythm that matched the work. She looked small among all that dust and hide, and yet as fixed as the anvil inside the forge. When the day was done, she washed the smell from her hands with vinegar, and I saw her shoulders drop that inch a person saves for worry. Mrs. Pike brought news tucked under her arm like a hen. A widow on the far ridge had taken ill, and her youngest would need seeing through a fever. Ada had a touch for such things. She looked at me as if asking leave of a thing that was not mine to grant. "Go," I said. "A man can be short a cook longer than a child can be short a hand." She went and was gone 3 days. In that time, the house gained a kind of echo I did not care for. When she returned, she set a small jar on the shelf. It was sourdough starter in a clear prison. The bubbles rose like men lifting their hats when ladies passed. "For your bread that rises where bread ought to rise," she said. This one came from a woman who learned it from a miner's wife, who learned it from a baker in St. Louis. "That makes it older than your stove, near enough." "I'll tend it," I said. "I've kept worse alive." The starter made a soft sound when I set it down, as if it had its own opinions and a kind way of telling them. Work chases work, and summer proved it. We put up hay with teeth and will. Ada's hands browned and healed from their first weeks, rawness, and she moved through my kitchen like she had been plotting its map with a surveyor's chain. Sometimes, on Sunday afternoons, we walked to the river and sat where the water made small talk with the stones. She didn't ask me to speak my mind. She watched the current the way a person watches a sermon when the preacher is better at silence than at words. One such afternoon she handed me the lawyer's voucher. "Deadlines come," she said. "A man in a suit somewhere imagines he can fix the shape of my life with a date and a punch." She watched a leaf unhook itself and begin its trip. "I will send him back his ticket with my name written steady across it." "You'll have more letters," I said. "I will," she said. "But a person can only be in one kitchen at once, and I have chosen this stove for now." She set her palm flat on the bench between us, not offering, not inviting, just steadying the board. I told her about my brother then, quick and plain, the way a man finally says the thing he's been carrying because his hands are needed for the next task. How he'd taken a fever on the Chisholm Trail and lost his words before he lost his breath. How he'd set a stone and gone back to work because cattle don't allow for collapse. She listened as if each word were a tool that needed wiping before it could be shelved. "You kept going," she said. "I don't know another kind to do." That was the end of that talk, and the start of something else I didn't name. The wheat ripened honest, and grasshoppers came late but not hungry. I traded with Gable, squared with Lowe over fence lines, and paid Pike with jars returned clean. The sky made big promises and kept some of them. On a Tuesday, Ada brought out a small bundle and set it by my plate. Inside lay a pair of gloves, fine, stitched to fit a hand that had not been considered by most stores. The leather was supple, as speech said right the first time. "You cannot keep house with hands bleeding," she said, "nor run a place with a woman trying to put bandages on a thing she never asked to fix." I set the gloves on the table, palms up like a question asked careful. "I have something too," I said, and brought out a pencil with a brass cap and a ledger cut to half size, cloth-bound. "You kept my columns honest when my eyes were tired. If you'll allow it, we'll call this the Ada book. Wages will go in it with your say on how they're spent. If you want to leave, the book goes in your bag. If you want to stay, it stays on the table and gathers the meals and the fence posts into something that shows itself in rows." She looked at the book as if it might bite or bless. "You'd let a woman's hand set your sums?" she said. There was no challenge in it, only the weight of custom set on the lip of a new thing. "I would let the best hand set them," I said. "I've seen how you reckon. Custom can learn a new tune if it listens." She placed her palm on the cover. "Then we will keep honest together," she said. The room felt bigger without being larger. The stove ticked once, and then settled. In August, the county clerk came around with his hat in his hand and papers, because the territory had new notions about land patents and established households. His boots had the nervous dust of a man who walks into kitchens uninvited. He tried a smile with too many teeth. "It would be simpler if there were, well," he gestured at the space between us like a man describing a bridge he hoped someone else would build. "Simpler for who?" Ada said, not unkind. She had bread on the rise and flour on her forearms like bracelets. "For the paperwork," he said, honest in his small way. I set him down with coffee and a word about the fence on the west quarter. "This land has rails enough," I said. "We'll not put a false one between two people to suit a sheet of paper. You may write, 'Household as per custom managed by two souls keeping to decency with Mrs. Pike as witness.' That's a phrase Reverend Lowe approves." He wrote it. His hand wobbled once and then held. "You run a tight ledger," he said, eyeing the columns. "Tight ledgers make easy signatures." "Not always easy," Ada said, "but right." She turned the loaves and let the room fill with the smell of what comes from patience. When the clerk left, we stood at the open door and watched the dust on his boots fade into the track. Neither of us spoke of marriage. Neither of us said, "Someday." We had agreed to an honest now, and it was more work than most promises. That night I carved a small willow switch and set it by the bucket to root. A house should have shade, even if it took years to grow. Fall snuck up in the evenings first. Shadows drew lines across the yard earlier, and the stove's heat felt like a friend returning from a long horse. Ada mended under the lamp, the needle making a quiet clock of its own. Sometimes she hummed a tune I didn't know. Sometimes my name was in that tune, without being said. One Saturday, after the market, a stranger came, a man with clean fingernails and a suit that had not yet learned the language of dust. He tipped his hat to Ada, but not to me. "Miss Merrick," he said, as if my kitchen had become a parlor for his convenience. "I'm engaged by your uncle to see you to the eastbound train. Your ticket is paid, your trunk can be gathered, and your duty is due." Ada wiped her hands on her apron and kept her eyes on the stranger's chin, not his mouth. "Duty is a word for something both parties agreed to," she said. I did not. "The family," he began. "Family is who feeds you when you come home with a foolish idea," she said. She reached for the little ledger and laid her hand on it. "I made a month's agreement here and renewed it in pencil and bread. I will not be going with you." The man squared himself as if a breeze had stiffened his coat. "Your uncle can make things hard." "Hard is the weather," I said from the doorway, coming in with my hat in my hand. "Men make things long or short. We try for short here." I set a coin on the table. "Your fare back to town. You tell the uncle his letter came late, and the person he was writing to has her own pen now." The fellow took the coin as if it itched him. He looked at the stove, at the willow switch in its jar, at the ledger, and found no purchase. "This will not end here," he said. "It will not," Ada said. "It will end when it ends, and we'll both know it then." She opened the door and held it for him, not as a servant, but as the proprietor of decency. He passed out into a world that did not take his side simply because his collar did. We didn't talk on it that evening. We shelled beans. The sound was small and reasonable. The room held to its shape. When I went to set the bolts, I saw the sky had broken clear after a spell of cloud. The stars looked close enough to thumb into place like nails. I turned the lamp down and listened to the stove tick. Somewhere east, an uncle went to bed with his lips in a thin line. Here the bread cooled and the willow took root. Winter again. It comes like a man who has lived with you before, sets his hat on the same peg and knows where you keep the spoons. The river worked under its ice like a patient thought. We wrapped the sills in burlap and tacked felt where the wind tried to talk its way in. Ada knit a scarf for Pike's youngest, who had a cough that worried like a loose board. I carved a handle for the draw knife and learned not to curse when I slipped. The house kept us, and we kept it, which is what houses ask in return for shelter. One night, near Christmas, Reverend Lowe brought a handful of widows and bachelor hands for a hymn in plain voices. Ada stood at the stove and passed mugs. I watched her speak 5 kinds of care without raising her tone. Later, when the door closed and the last thank you scuffed down the path, she leaned on the table and rubbed the heel of her hand where the ladle had made it sore. "I do not miss Peoria," she said. "I miss a sister sometimes, and then I stop missing because missing is a job that never pays a wage." She wrote once. I said, for Ada had shown me the letter with neat, careful pride, "She may write again when she's ready." "She will when she has news that knows how to sit in a room without making a mess," Ada said. She tied up the bread in a cloth and set plates upside down to keep out morning dust. A person can wait without turning to stone. The lamp drew a circle of gold around her, as if it had been told to. In spring, the willow made leaves like small hands trying to be brave. We stood by it with coffee and didn't name what it marked. There is a kind of happiness that would die from loud recognition. It is a skittish thing, best approached sideways, with chores in your hands. We planted a little kitchen garden inside a fence the rabbits did not respect, and Ada outwitted them with a string that rang a bell when a paw touched it. The bell sounded twice and then not again. "Every creature learns," she said, "even men." I could argue, but I didn't. I asked her one night, plain as the weather, if she would like to walk on Sundays after dinner and sit by the cottonwoods without the Reverend or Pike or any witness but the water. "We can talk about the price of nails or about nothing," I said. "I'd like to court you the way a man courts in a place where work does not let go easy." She looked at her hands, then at the ledger, then at the window where the last light made a thin coin on the sill. "I would like that," she said. "We will do it slow enough that gossip gets bored." She smiled with half her mouth, like a woman who had waited out a long winter and had decided about spring. I reached for her hand, and she let me take it. It was not a promise, not yet. It was 2 people telling the same truth under one roof. On a Sunday weeks later, with the water saying a small, agreeable thing to the stones, Ada told me she had written her uncle and said she was wed to her own wages and her own peace and would not be given over like a trunk. I used every good word I had, she said. Even so, I suppose I've made an enemy who shares some of my blood. Blood is a stubborn river, I said, watching a willow seed float, but it don't own the banks. She touched my shoulder with the back of her fingers, quick as a sparrow lands, and off again. We came home to a house that smelled of bread and oiled leather. On the table lay a parcel from Gables, wrapped in brown paper and tied with string. Inside, a tin coffee measure with our initials stamped small where the thumb would rest. No card. A widow's kindness looks like that. Useful, unbragging. Ada set it near the pot and tapped it once with her nail. "We'll keep our measures honest," she said. When the first thunderhead shouldered up from the west, and the corners of the sky stacked themselves into weather, I walked the new calves to higher ground and checked the fence posts at the low spot. The creek had learned, but I had learned faster. I came back wet to the hips and hungry, and the house met me with the sound of a spoon on a pot and the sight of Ada bent over the stove. It was not a miracle. It was better than that. It was earned. If you care to share, tell me sometime in the comments about a closed door that taught you how to knock elsewhere and be answered. Each life has such hinges. I like to hear how they turned. When the first cicadas brought their rasp to the hours and the wheat bent like men passing under a low lintel, I had the sense to be thankful without making a show of it. We had work, and a roof, and a ledger with 2 hands on it. I slept as a man sleeps when he has set aside the right amount of worry for tomorrow and no more. The lamp on the sill burned easy. Outside, the willow learned to hold its ground in wind. Years later, I can still hear that first knock, 2 even taps, the pause that followed. The room I lived in then is gone to a different stove and a new table, but that sound has not left off making sense. Some folks say chance is a horse that won't take a bridle. I say it's a door that shows up where you didn't expect a wall to do you any favors. Ada's boots were wet that night, and her coat was mended at the pocket with brown thread that did not match. She put her hand on the ledger and asked for a month. It turned out to be the right amount to begin with. The lamp, where I set it on the sill, made a small ship of light in a dark yard, and if I turned it down careful, it would chime, just once, almost like a bell asking to be believed. That's how I remember it. Thank you for listening tonight. If this quiet fit you, there are more trails to walk in our American Frontier series playlist.